There, we're recording.
Oh, oops. Now I'm rotating. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dirty Drinking Coffee, Stinking, and Making Stuff. Because we have a very official title. I will be adding another view, but I kind of wanted to roam around for a second because we've been doing all sorts of stuff. I want to hear what the doing this weekly has changed for you, if anything, and then while you think about that, I want to show a couple things. So Simone, in case you guys haven't seen any other version, any other episodes of this, Simone a couple weeks back told me, or she was like, you know what? I dare you. We were giving each other dares that would actually expand what we're creating, and what I mean by expand what we're creating, if that sounds weird, like I'm using some other language, basically like looking at, okay, Stephanie, I see that you've made all this. Okay, I'll just show you. So what Simone had seen I had created before, like what I had made art-wise before, was a lot of stuff that's sort of in this realm. Can you see?
Pretty.
Yeah, this is a piece I unwrapped. That's actually a piece that I unwrapped. Oh, there's the camera. It's a piece that I unwrapped yesterday. I would have sworn, so I had this piece on my wall for a while at my other house. And I really thought this was a complete one. But when I unwrapped it after moving, I could have sworn that it was almost all white. And when I opened it, it was not all white. And the dark part of it was really weird, where I was just like, this is not a complete piece at all. And so anyway, as I do, I finished it yesterday. So anyway, again, but this is what Simone is used to seeing for me. And so what Simone said was, that's cool. That's kind of pretty. And what if you actually also tried drawing some stuff, like actually drawing things like, I don't know if you even said people. I think in my head, I went to portrait and people, but anyway, just actually trying to draw things the way they look. And it's been a long time since I've drawn things the way that they looked. And so it was a stretch for me to actually do that. And it has resulted, I don't have any pieces down here, but it has resulted in some really freaking cool pieces that I'm really excited about. And so when I say it expanded my world, it expanded what I'm willing to create, what I'm excited about creating. It actually expanded, increased the options that I have available to me. And has led me on a little journey, and I've been curious and having fun. So I also ordered a book. This is probably backwards. I ordered a figure drawing book.
It's forwards.
It is forwards? Cool. So anyway, so we'll see how this goes. The interesting thing is once I started opening up the figure drawing book, I really thought that maybe it would have but some good examples of stuff that I could just sort of try drawing off of right away. And it has some of that, but what I discovered, so this is how worlds expand. I discovered looking at this and looking at all these different figure drawing apps and stuff on the phone. And so see, I've explored a lot since she asked me to do that. And I'm finding that I don't like what my options are to draw from right now. So I may also add a photography series to this of doing either nudes or partial nudes that I would actually like to draw from. Yeah. So it's funny how one small dare to draw something that looks real has led me on an entire journey that I'm excited about. Like this has been really fun. So thank you for that dare.
You're welcome. Oh, that's neat. You could also hire a nude.
Well, I can, but one of the things that, and so I might do that just for that might be fun and like give me a chance to explore like, shaping bodies and stuff like that in a way that I haven't done. But the other piece that I really would like is so when I draw, what I realized as I was drawing, there's a piece that's basically a dancer. And what I was doing whenever I was drawing it is feeling the movement in my body, feeling what the musculature would actually be doing, what would be engaged, what wouldn't be engaged, where the feeling of a ripple in the body would be. Yeah. And that's really what I was painting, even more than the actual figure itself, even though I was paying attention to what a body actually looks like. And so I find that in a lot of, that's partially what I'm missing in the figure drawing stuff, is that bodies are in poses. And so, a body to get in that pose has to be engaged in certain ways. But a lot of times the people are missing from the pictures. So they're not actually there. So what I would love, and so if I'm painting from the energies and the presence of both the being and the body, which again, I'm sorry for that foreign language, but basically like we have the physical element of the body, and then there's you that animates or that participates with the body. We'll just say animates it. That's not entirely what I actually get is true, but let's just say like you're animating this body. And so if you're standing somewhere and you space out, you're missing. Like if I took a picture of you, then you would not, nobody would look at that picture and get what and I'll just use words that make sense, but what your personality is, or your, what it's like to be with you. Yeah. And so what I'm finding in these is people get in a pose and then they stay there, but they're not necessarily engaged or present. And that's that energy when you see a really amazing, I'm going to say picture, because pictures, it happens more often in pictures, but when you see a really engaging picture, oftentimes it's because there's something about it that you're engaged with the person, like you're getting something, there's some quality or some energy that you're like really engaged in. I want that in painting too. I want that in I don't want just the shapes of bodies. If I'm just painting the shape of a body, I feel like that's a really beginning exercise that I also require. I also require beginning exercises for like drawing things that are not abstract.
Yeah, there's a book, because I know what you mean, and a lot of them are like sort of empty. I actually bought a new book from the Peculiar Children. It's the second in the series, and it's called The Hollows. Uh-huh. And that's what it feels like when you look at a lot of these figure drawing books, is it's this hollow, like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Whereas,
so you have to give it, I guess that's where you can sort of make up a story of who's there and add that energy yourself. And
that's why I like this. I think his name is Finley Cohen, and I used to teach figure drawing from that book, because the way he drew, all of the characters always had a personality. They always had a life already. Uh-huh. And the way he also broke down shapes of the body was really easy for people to engage with. So
that's interesting. Like, what do you mean by, because this uses, he actually, the one of the cool things about this book so far has been that he does several different ways of how to break down a body shape. So he does it in circles, which I actually find a little confusing. He does it in squares, which is slightly less confusing, although I don't know that I'll use it that much. And then breaking it down into individual shapes and then almost like rearranging them. So that's actually a really interesting. So I think I'll play some with that one. I'm going to see if I can get the way that he does the circle one. And And then he does the traditional sort of stick circle one too. Like that's another one. But I really get that engaging with like muscle shapes actually, you know, would work.
There's two things. There's with this guy, what I loved about him, and maybe this is how my brain works.
I would love a copy. I mean, I would love a to know what that book is or where to get it. So
show it. But what he does is he relates things. So for instance, he takes so a model's body, like if you're drawing a fashion model, is usually 8 heads high. Mm-hmm. So your head is always the starting point.
That's interesting.
So the neat thing is if you take your piece of paper and you draw 8 heads, then all on top of each other.
It's heads all the way down, like turtles all the way down.
And I'm trying to write or type and it's not working. There we go. Fantasy Figures, it's called. And because I searched high and low for really good figure drawing. And I
should have asked you instead of just buying a random book.
That's all right. You probably learned things from it. I don't think he actually has it in here, but I'll show you the cover of the book. So the heads relate to the different parts of let me share my screen. So for instance, if you take, I can't remember because I haven't taught this in a while, but if you take your head and the size of your head and then you move it down, I do remember. So your second head, the bottom of your second head is going to be in line with the person's nipples.
So my head.
Your head.
Holy crap, it does.
Yeah.
Weird.
And then I don't remember if
my head's bigger than I thought it was.
It's true. It's the hair. It's very, people don't realize it cuts you. And then I think it's if you turn your head sideways, that's half of your half from your shoulder to the point of your chest. So if you take your head, if you look at me, you take your head like this and you turn it.
Can't see because you're still showing your screen.
Oh, you can't see me? So if you take your head, that and the length of your head, and you put it sideways, it should measure from your shoulder to the middle of your chest.
Oh, so my head should be this big.
Yeah. Huh. So he uses the head as a measurement throughout the body so that you can take your pencil and just sort of go, okay, so my head is this big, and then measure where your body is.
Huh.
And I mean, I taught kids that, were 16 and could only draw a stick figure badly. And within a few weeks, they often just took this book themselves. I didn't really do much. And they just ran away with it and then came back and could draw. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
So.
Well, it's interesting because this even has me looking at my body different. This isn't the first time I've drawn bodies. Like we did figure studies even whenever I was like in middle school and stuff, but that feels like an entire different lifetime ago. And, I was drawing it from the perspective of a middle schooler and like understanding the body the way a middle schooler understands a body. And you like really have a totally different way of being with your body as an adult and like understanding a body as an adult. And you have all sorts of different things that you've done with a body as an adult, Yeah. And so even looking, and then your own body shape and stuff changes over the course of a lifetime. So like I also looked in the mirror the other day and I was like, oh wait, well, so we're actually, because I'm looking at this figure and I'm like, that's interesting. And I was like, well, how come my body looks different? I was like, my body doesn't seem to be sort of like lined up that way right now. Oops, hold on. I keep trying to, are you there?
Yep.
Okay. So I was like, what is it about my body that looks different than that? And I was like, because I curve in like this one really sort of shocked me. It was the one that I did the first figure, the first painting of. And it sort of shocked me at how square some bits were. There's nothing square about me. And so I was like, well, where is that square coming from? And the waist seemed longer in a different way. And then I went and poked and prodded, and I was like, oh, that's because I have like fat on top of that. So my hip is actually lower than I think my hip is right now. Yeah. Because the way it gets rounded out with fat is totally different than if you have like than if you have like 7% body fat.
Yeah.
Like 7% body fat is not actually normal. I was looking at this the other day about models and what they do to actually be model size. And not all of them. Some people actually have that as a physique, and that's actually, they can eat as much as they want because that's how their body wants to be. But there are lots of models that actually would be normal people size if they even ate at all. And so they're like eating cotton balls and weird shit so that they're not so hungry.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like in order to be the skinny that, anyway. So when I say fat, I'm like, that's not even talking about like fat. That's just talking about like being a person. So anyway, so it was interesting. So it has me exploring different things in a different way too, like looking at like, well, how do bodies get all shaped and stuff? Like it's a fun.
One of my favorite exercises was we would do this with, I'm going to have to run outside in a minute because I realize my pond is about to overflow. So it's not there yet, but it's creeping up.
You can go now if you need. If you want.
But I'll forget what I was going to say, which I probably already have. Yeah. So in figure drawing, what we would do is she would put up different diagrams of the musculature system or the skeletal system. And she would say, okay, now you have to draw this person, but I only want you to draw the muscles, or I only want you to draw the bones. And so, we didn't have a picture of the skeleton doing this or whatever. And so you had to look at where the muscles are and what they might do. And it was the coolest ever.
Yeah. This does take me into that to me, did some people have an easy time with that and some people have a really hard time with that?
Well, I have to tell you a little story with this because there were two guys, the only two guys in this all female, drawing group. Like, hey, how come this guy doesn't have a penis on him? The muscles, right? And he's like, well, duh, man, the penis is made out of cartilage. That's amazing. It's, to this day, it still makes me chuckle.
If you're a whale.
I was like, you have one. Like, wouldn't you know? Like, it's amazing.
He's like, well, mine's always hard. I mean, you could assume.
You could. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. Like, you start going, well, the places that it's good fun.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a feel your own cartilage break. So, no, I was saying so you can go to your pond.
I'll be right back.
So if you are just joining us, what we've been doing each week is actually getting together and taking an hour on whatever day that we get together. So far it's been Wednesdays, and using that hour to work, to paint, to play. And it turns out that I've done probably less painting during our painting times than I've done in the rest of the week, but it has been such an inspiration for me, and I've painted more over the past few weeks. Even just as like last week, all anybody did was see me paint gesso on a gigantic canvas. That is now a piece, actually.
Excellent.
Yeah. That became the dancer, actually.
Yes.
That. So anyway.
And we have a Pinterest page, so you can go and check out some of the things that we're doing.
Add stuff.
Yeah. I've added you, so you can add your stuff.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
So when you work, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you were saying, like, how has it changed things for me about, like, the challenges and stuff? And I would say, like being vulnerable and showing my work to people has been huge. I dropped off my 7 pieces yesterday to a gallery. That was really cool.
So that came from a dare. My dare was, I looked at what Simone has, I looked at what she's created and the different pieces that she's made and all of this kind of stuff. And then I knew that she had shown her work at the school that she had been at. But I hadn't really seen her really reach out and show her work beyond sort of, I don't know, it felt like people that knew you somehow.
Yeah.
And so when I was looking for challenges to give Simone that would actually, that thing that I was talking about, she did for me, like expanding my horizons, expanding what I can create and what's possible. Yeah. When I looked at that, I went, well, can she now? And it was like, yeah. And so I dared her to show her work over the course of 7 days to show her work to 7 people that she was, what did I say? That you were scared to show your work to?
Yeah, that I was vaguely terrified of, I think were your words.
So that was my dare to Simone.
That was good. And what's interesting is, like, even taking my stuff to the printers and having it printed onto cards or even scanned, like when the first time I did it, like I had ordered stuff through them, manuals and whatever before, but when it was my own work, my voice was shaking and I got all bumbly and I couldn't talk properly and I was like making excuses for myself and
I'm going to pause here. So anybody who's watching, your dare for the next week, should you choose to accept it, and whatever you do, don't accept it for the rest of your life, is to not make any excuses for your work, or, well, let's just say for your work. I will expand that dare later. But so if somebody sees your work, you are not allowed for the next week to say, oh, yeah, but, oh, thanks. They're like, oh, that's cool. And then the second that you feel, instead of you going, thank you, that moment where you want to go, oh yeah, but I meant to do this, or, well, I'm going to add this, or I was thinking about changing it in this way, or, well, it would be better if everywhere you go to cut your own work down in the face of anybody else, including yourself, this week your dare is to actually just go, thank you.
Yeah.
And even if they're like, well, that shit, what are you going to do with it next? You just go, thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
No excuse. Thanks. Thanks for caring.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for caring. Yeah.
Thank you for caring. I see how much you care about my work. Thanks for caring. Yeah, but what are you going to do with it? Let them be uncomfortable, because you're not answering. Like, we want to make them more comfortable with their judgment. And what if we never made anybody else more comfortable for their judgment? So they look at you and they go, yeah, well, what are you going to do with it? And you go,
yep.
And then they're like, what?
Yeah.
Make them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Don't buy into their stuff.
Yeah. That's one of the things that maybe it's related or unrelated, but one of the things that I've noticed is, like, how many ways that I try to make people comfortable, whether they're judging or not.
Well, I mean, okay, this is actually something interesting to look at. Like, how many times do you try and make people comfortable if they're not judging? Do you need to? Are they if they're not judging, are they uncomfortable?
No, but I sometimes do something else because I'm so grateful that they're not judging. I'm just like, oh, I love you. I smother them.
That's funny.
I'd like to say it's not true, but it is.
I don't know why this is relevant now, except for I think my muffins that I was cooking are done. Just for the humorous factor, I ended up with chocolate chips in my belly button last night.
Yes, I saw that. Well, I didn't actually see it, but
right. I went on a jog. Talk about not being apologetic for being silly. So I went on a jog, and then when I got home, I was like, time to take a shower. Well, right now in the woods where I live, there are lots of ticks. Just kind of lots of them.
I thought you were going to say something else.
No.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. I'm just curious now. Anyway, there's lots of ticks. And so I was like, all right, time to take a shower, tick check. And in my belly button, like I take my shirt off and there are 2 big black dots. And I was like, so I was like, are they ticks? And I go to sort of like put my fingernail underneath them to like, whatever. But it kind of smeared. And I was like, huh. And so then I thought it was like bugs. Now I don't know why this was my next thing. I got it close and it was just a smeary mess. And then I was like, I had to smell it. Cause like, I don't know what I thought a squished bug would smell like, but it didn't have legs. So then I was like, well, what is this? Chocolate. It was chocolate. I have no idea how I ended up with chocolate. I guess that's so I guess that technically when you have cleavage, you sort of have a food tube directly to your belly button. So I'm guessing that that's how that happened, that this is just a belly button delivery service for any dropped food.
And then it has a little bucket at the bottom.
Belly button bucket. So for your next figure drawing.
Oh my God. I have this friend that could take the strangest moments in life, and she was somebody I knew in high school, but she was way beyond high school. Like she should have been in college already, or just living her life. And
skip this awful.
It was just not a place for her. Like, but she would do these amazing drawings, and I remember one of my favorites. I went to an all-girls school, and so when we would have school dances, the boys would come, and of course the girls would get crazy.
Yeah.
And so she drew this picture of all these girls, like, sort of humpbacked and, like, slobbering as the bus of boys came in.
That's funny.
Yes. I don't know what relevance that has to your belly button, but
slobbering, probably.
Slobbering, that's what. Yeah.
It was the drill. I'm one of those girls, except for real life slobber.
Real life slobber.
One of my neighbors saw the post and he said, "Oh my gosh, in our neighborhood we should open one of those weird Japanese fetish restaurants where we eat food off of models." And I said, "Yeah, but the selection was terrible." Since it was only chocolate chips. And he said, "Yeah, but you can just finish your breakfast, like have some breakfast and then come, like have some coffee, have some eggs, there'll be enough for everybody." I was like, good point.
That's funny. The other thing that I've realized after like getting together and doing this stuff is like, I only want to make art. Like I don't want to do anything else.
I get that. Like I'm with you right now.
Yep.
So I also, the other pieces that I started unwrapping, so the piece I finished yesterday, I am basically painting over some paintings. I also ordered some more gigantic boards. I went and I was like, okay, some more this size, and I was like, yeah. And there was like some smaller ones too, and I was like, no. So I did get some that are a little bit smaller, but but I got enough pieces to do a piece a day for 30 days.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So
Cool.
Although that's kind of what I've been doing recently, is close to a piece a day.
I did this yesterday and I thought of you.
The blank. That's fun. The I like the show me closer. I feel like there's some detail stuff. Ooh, okay. I like the the texture's fun.
So, it's not quite finished yet because I want it to be a bit deeper because you can still see the ground, like the canvas.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do this little creature, and I thought it was native to the UK, and it's called a muntjac.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Muntjac.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not very big. They're about the size, about the height of a Labrador, and they're a deer.
Oh,
and
that is bigger than I was thinking. I was thinking creatures that may be this big.
A bit bigger than that. And they've got these funny little horns that come up like this. And then they've got yeah.
Sorry, you can say the words for other people.
And so I was looking at them, and they're not actually from the UK. They're from Asia, from Southeast Asia.
Huh.
And some duke brought them over because he was like, "Oh, I must have these creatures in my." And of course, they escaped.
As you do.
As you do. But they're really weird. They make a barking sound. You don't often see them because they're just very slick. And they'll take on anything. They can be very. Yeah, they can be aggressive. If they're young or in trouble, then they'll be aggressive.
Oh.
Although I read one article where this guy went to pet one and it gouged him in the hand with its tusk. So
yeah, some of those things. I was looking recently at how dangerous that we've made the world. And so when we go out into the world and we have this idea that now I am not saying go pet wild things. Leave them alone. That is so not nice. That would be all sorts of random people coming up to you and trying to pet you.
It's not nice. I've had it happen.
Yeah. You're so cute. It's so weird. Mind your personal space. The idea that wild animals should not have personal space is a weird point of view that we created by making our films, subjecting our pets to being petted, that we get from films. What do you mean?
I said too many Disney films.
Too many Disney. Yeah. Pet me now. Pet me now. Yeah. Oh, that's driving my dogs nuts, apparently. But I was thinking about how we've made dirt dangerous, we've made being out in the woods dangerous, even looking at ticks that I really am not, I don't want I don't like them. Parasites freak me out just a little bit. But I was even looking up the diseases that were you can get diseases from ticks. And in some places, you're up to 50% of the tick population will actually have Lyme disease and transmit it, which I was like, whoa, that actually is a high number. But it doesn't transmit right away. It's not like they bite you and then you have it. It's bite you.
Being a werewolf, for instance.
And yes, exactly. That you get bitten by a werewolf, you're done. That's it. You're a werewolf. Either you're werewolf food or you are now a werewolf just by getting scratched.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not like that. So you've got a good 24 hours to find it and get it out before you get, Lyme disease or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, just looking at these things where we even dinosaurs, this was crazy. Do you know that most dinosaurs all the way up through the 1950s, if your local place that has dinosaur bones, whatever that may be, has not had their dinosaur bones revamped, is very likely to have their dinosaur bones placed in whatever, like made. So if you have a big dinosaur bone sculpture, right, where they're put together, it's likely that they've been monsterized. And a monsterized, so a monsterized version is where you have this vicious looking dinosaur that's standing in a precarious, like, it'd be like seeing a bear in the Natural History Museum, and the bear is like, Bears do not spend most of their time in that position. That is actually a fairly rare position for a bear to take, right? Like, just think about how many times you yell at people. It would be like positioning you in a yelling position as if that's how you spent your life. So
really funny.
It is funny. So then the dinosaurs, so they actually had to break some bones or put, even, in some scenarios, to make them stand in these violent positions, because that's not how they actually stood. So some of them, sort of the T-Rex is one of the biggest versions of that it was monsterized. But the T-Rex being a standing, running thing that was eating everything is actually pretty weird for its shape. Like, it's actually a very strangely shaped thing. A thing that can't...
It has these little arms.
So the most convincing... So anyway, they were like, it doesn't even stand up like that. It doesn't stand like Godzilla. It would have to have a broken, like, tailbone in order for it to stand like Godzilla. If they actually stood more like this. So they sort of did this, but then the most convincing thing that I saw was like, we think it may have actually been more like a crocodile. So its feet would stand in deeper water, and its front paws would basically just be for like lunging on shores and stuff. Now, I don't know if you're a dinosaur person, that may or may not be true. It was just one of the theories of how if a body was actually constructed in a way that made sense for its environment, the evidence we actually have is like, that makes sense for why you would have a body like that you would have these powerful legs for lunging, and your front paws were not, that they just needed to kind of do, they just kind of and a powerful tail, whoosh.
Because it doesn't, they don't really make a lot of sense.
For standing upright, it's upright stander. They can't reach anything, like.
Well, that's why there's so many jokes about them.
There was one, I don't know why this is the one so there are these two T-Rexes. And there's a picture of the one, she's kind of looking back and she's like, pull my hair. And of course he's like, I can't. Anyway.
There's a cute little cartoon, I'll have to find it, that I used to play for my students, that they're both after the same bug, I think. And they both lunge after this bug, but then they fall down. And they can't get up because they've got these little arms and they can't get themselves righted again, right? They're like a turtle that's on its back.
I'm like, huh.
Like, they'd have to, like, get their head, or, I don't, like, you know what I mean? These are the things I think about.
That actually, no, I'm, like, the water thing then makes even more sense, where you're like, we'd never have that. How would one go from lying down to?
I think they would have to use their. Well, if you see a person that doesn't have any arms and you see them move themselves around.
Yeah, but that's also an anomaly. Like, that's a person who's adapted to a situation that's not normal for the body type that they have.
That's true.
So they do amazing adaptations to actually, like, use their bodies in really amazing creative ways.
But for such a predator, because what we've read so far is that they're a huge predator, to be limited you know, if they fall down, you know.
We've run it. Why has that never been brought up in science class? Like, I feel like that's a really, like, talk about, this is where I think that, putting people together in groups that normally wouldn't make sense. So if you have a whole bunch of people already talking about things, there's a bunch of assumptions that often get made already.
Yeah.
Where if you have somebody come in and go, wow, that's really weird. What happens if they fall down? And everybody in the room that's been studying them for years goes, holy crap.
Yeah.
Who knew that little question was a huge awareness? What do they do if they fall down? Like, oh, the way we've been drawing these is crazy. Like, if they lunged at anyway.
But I mean, it's the same as, like, if you have a particular point of view. I don't know how we got here, but we did.
Figure drawing.
Figure drawing. Yes, this all relates. But for instance, if you have a particular point of view, whether it's like a religious point of view or a Darwinian point of view or whatever, if you discover something, a body or a town or a whatever, that was something they always taught us in archaeology. But then there's things like biblical archaeology where they go in with a biblical point of view. And I was thinking that if you found aliens, for instance, or even a dinosaur, how do you work on
that? You say it's fake.
Yeah, you'd have to. It's fascinating.
Well, here's the thing. I love this about playing with, using the tools of access consciousness. One of the things I love about that is it basically is about stripping away your particular point of view about things.
Yeah.
You're welcome to pick your own point of view up at any point, but it's almost like, okay, so I'm going to for this moment, I'm going to take any points of view that I have. I'm going to put them over here. I can pick them up if I want to. Now, what happens if this dinosaur falls down? And then I'm like, okay. Yeah. So if I don't have to prove that my point of view is right, because my point of view is over here, and I'm taking my point of view and I'm putting it over here in a box, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else, a different box, not the box of my brain. And I go, cool, I'm going to look at this as if I have no idea how this animal works.
Yeah.
Then you can see things that you couldn't see before. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. But oftentimes those points of view that we're using that we can't put, that we can't put aside. Like, some people don't want to put them aside. So people who go in and are like, no, I'm actually proving something here.
Yeah.
There are those people. But then there are also all the points of view that you don't even know that you have. They're so based in the way that you see the world, the way that gravity is real, the way that, all of those kinds of things, where to some particulates, gravity is not real. And then you go, well, so everything that's real should be real to the smallest degree, but we find out that it's not. We get to the smallest degree and the stuff that we think is real is not real. And people refuse to go, yeah, but what's small? Okay, so then what's true at the smallest degree? Now, here's the weirdest part, that we don't instead go, well, then cool, what's possible? If we think it should be possible across the board, then what we find at the smallest should be possible at the biggest. Now, what would that be like? We don't do that. We actually go to the smallest and then go, that's weird, hide it, right? Like, people just go, don't tell anybody that. Like, don't, we've known that stuff doesn't work the way that we think it works for a long, long time, but it hasn't made it to popular.
Yeah.
I watched a show on ESP, the ESC. I think I called it ESB a few times. Energetic Synthesis of Being. ESP.
There we go.
And it was amazing. It was a physicist. And one of the coolest things that this show has turned from an art. You have art in the background. I may or may not have the piece I'm working on in the background. Oh, it's way too short. Anyway, so he was talking about, he's a physicist, and he's been working with, all right, now I can pretend, oh, I see. I'm going to have to do some work to make that functional. That's good. Now I have art in the background that I'm going to over. Okay. So anyway, so one of the things that he was saying was, he was talking about how anybody can do remote viewing. And he was talking about basically what you do is you stop labeling things. Like that was one of his first things. This physicist was like, you got to stop labeling things. Like, first of all, because you actually exist beyond labels. You as a being, like he was talking about being. He was basically like, no, so here's this thing. So if I ask you what's at this coordinates, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is to tell me just what you see. But don't call it anything. Don't assume it's anything. Just tell me what you see. So if you see a square inside a square, just say it's a square inside of a square. Not it's a box. Not it's a tube. Not that it's a hallway or a room, right? It's a box inside a box. And even that's labeling it. But he's basically like, stop doing the labeling bit. He goes, because what we found is that it's no harder for you to see what is 6,000 miles away than it is for you to see what's in front of you. And it's no harder for you to be aware of what's all the way around the globe or be aware of what's in my pocket. And it's no harder for you to be aware of the future than it is for you to be aware of right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And so then he was telling some stories about remote viewing that were really cool. And this is actually what I was about to get to a little while ago when I asked if it was harder for some people to see the bones and the muscular structures. Because I was like, you're actually doing a version of this remote viewing, but you're remote viewing the interior of a body and using your perceptive awareness of a body to actually almost like when I perceive it, I'm like, I actually feel the bones. Yeah. Like that, right? Like, oh no, it's not that I'm not seeing them. Like it's almost like perceiving them and feeling them. Yeah. So all this is coming back around how you use physics to draw. And so what he was saying is that, this was really funny. So one of the things that he was talking about was, he goes, this person was supposed to be our control subject. So their control subject, who was just a normal person. Now she also, I think, was like a photographer and so like she had and could speak like 8 languages. So like their control subject was also a pretty impressive person. But she had no, as far as she knew, wasn't psychic, wasn't, she's just a normal person walking around. She ended up being their biggest resource for getting remote viewing correct. But one of the pictures he showed is one of her first viewing things, and she drew this thing out and he showed what was actually there. So he goes, okay, so here's what she drew. Here's the place that we actually had her looking at. And then he said, but I don't actually think she saw this place. I think she actually just cheated and saw a few minutes ahead at what we were going to show her, because here's the picture that we actually showed her, and here's her drawing. So her drawing most closely matched the image that they showed her, not the actual place. So I found that interesting. He goes, I think she just cheated and looked ahead 10 minutes instead of looking at the actual place. Either way, she got the information correct.
Yeah.
Kind of doesn't matter where you pull it from. But one of the things I started playing with was, how many times have you actually looked at what a piece will be and that you're actually already painting from that as a reference? Not when you try and get it right. Like Frank talking a lot whenever he was on the show was talking a lot about having a picture in his mind and trying to create that. Yeah. What I'm talking about is actually different than that. Like there are sometimes when I'm working on a piece and I'll be talking with the piece. I'm like, okay, well, cool. What now? And I'll get a very particular sense of color. Yeah. So that's way different than going, oh, if I was following a color wheel. Yeah. what I would use is a color that complemented blah, blah, blah. Like that's very different than getting a sense of a color that comes next.
Well, and I think that's the key word is a sense, like the green canvas that I showed you, this one.
Yeah. I'm so enjoying the hues of that. Like that's
one of the things that I love doing is taking these, wild animals and putting them in either a setting that's very rich that almost looks like an interior, or putting bits of costume on them, like the bunny.
Like, show us the bunny.
The bunny.
It's behind you.
Yeah. I don't know if you could see the bunny. There's the bunny. He's got his trousers on.
I'm loving how he's coming out. So last week in our we had kind of a controversial show last week.
We did, didn't we?
We did. I was like, do we put that up? Like, I feel like one day I'm going to be quoted on this and I'm going to be reading it. Like,
well, it's funny you say that because I put it up on my Facebook page and I sent it to you, and it's like nobody saw it. It was very interesting.
Oops. I was like, I feel like I'm going to get quoted on some of the weird, like not the weird, I'm fine saying weird stuff, but every once in a while I say stuff that I'm like, oh, if you get quoted on that just sucks because it's not what you mean. Well, like, it's not based on something I believe.
Though, like if you can, like much like your artwork, if you can just ask it when it would like to be seen, then it can be seen or heard when it's appropriate, rather than, because that often happens. I mean, so many artists have put their work out into the world, like Van Gogh, for instance, like, and people are like, ew, what is that? Right? So,
well, the people who were painting in the 20s, in the 1920s, the people, or even the teens, like 1910, actually, are some of the first images that I've personally seen that really were the forefront of modern painting that people are still exploring. Like it's just net, like, anyway, just looking at that's amazing. Where somebody in 1910, to look at how shocking some of that work would have been, in contrast with some of the Victorian stuff, where stuff had gotten so floral and so detailed and so every bit was covered with detail of some sort, to then have this
yeah
would have been shocking to see.
There was so much reaction to, like, the First World War, like the horrors that a lot of people saw. There was a lot of musical reaction as well to that time. And I think that carries through, and then you have the Second World War. So it's really interesting to
Wait, what do you mean? I actually am not familiar with that.
Well, because I can't remember when it was, but there's the when was the First World War? Let me look it up so I can be accurate.
I was like, I thought it was in the teens or 20s.
Yeah, it is.
I have these lyrics in my head right now, and they've been in my head for the past 2 days. So I'm curious.
Well, so there's the First World War, which is 1914. You said 1910, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting period, that time.
Yeah, except for the thing is that whole bit of being aware of the future. So what I was looking at with Van Gogh, like, that it is no harder to be aware of the future than it is to be aware. And what was the word he used? Because it was, that it's no harder to be aware of the future. He didn't say the future. He called it something else. But anyway, no harder to be aware of the future than it is to be aware contemporaneously was the word.
Ooh, good word.
And I was like, oh, that is a good word. I was like, oh, contemporaneously. Huh.
Yeah.
It was such a good way somehow to talk about the place of awareness in what we call time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a way that's not saying now. Like, now is a really, like, technically it's an impossible feat to have it now.
Yes.
Like, that's actually impossible. You're lying. Every time you say now, you're lying.
Liar!
You liar. We could do that now. Liar.
Getting to the sense of painting.
Mm-hmm.
It is a different thing from people trying to get what's in their head out onto the paper or canvas. I think I've probably felt it most strongly when I'm sculpting.
Tell me more.
Well, I remember it happened to me probably one of the first times in...
It happened to you?
It happened. Damn it. I was in a high school art class, and we had to do these tiles, and I remember I was doing like a moon, like a snail, the moon shell. Really big. They're probably about that big, size of your hand, almost, maybe a bit smaller, just the round part of your hand. And you find them on the west coast of BC.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was almost like my eyes were, it's going to sound creepy, but my eyes were almost on the tips of my fingers.
Oh, and
And so I was seeing with my eyes, creating this, and it was almost like a memory of the shape and the feel of the shell.
Yeah. This is where, to me, this is one of these brilliant places where we have capacities that we don't even know that we have. We actually have superpowers that we discount all the time. I know that I was talking.
You don't have a cape.
It is because you don't have a cape. If you had a cape on, you would know that you were a superhero.
Exactly.
Speaking of feeling things, I feel like my battery is just gonna 3%. I may have to run upstairs really fast and get a battery pack for this guy.
Right.
But this is one of those places where it's like those kids in China or whatever who can see with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
When you go, it was weird. It was like I had eyeballs on the ends of my fingertips, and it's like, yeah, and and yeah, you do. And when we turn them into weird things or think that it's a fluke, or when
I was thinking of Pan's Labyrinth. I don't know if you've seen it. That's what the image came to my head, and I was like,
yeah, yeah, that's a creepy guy.
Yeah.
So but I mean, I think this is one of those places where it's like, I was talking with a friend of mine, and I said, well, I became aware, and I was talking about seeing what was going to happen in a particular area in a certain time frame, right? If we didn't change anything, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't think anything of it. That's just how
you roll.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, okay, well, that's, and he stopped me while I was talking, and he's like, that's awareness of future. And I was kind of like, yeah, I know, right? Yeah, so what? But I wonder where we could, like, what we could actually expand, like, where the things that we, like that you sing with your fingertips in that moment, if we do something and we go, oh yeah, so I did this thing, it was weird, and once upon a time, that instead of doing things like when he stopped me and said, that's awareness of future, and I'm like, yeah, so I do this all the time. That's really different than going, oh, I actually do have awareness of future, and can I use that I haven't considered yet? Like, and we can use it with stuff like art, right? Like, we can use it for anything. Like, I can use those senses. I can use that to be aware, not just for, like, I can do it with art. I can do it with my life. I can do it with, anything. So when we start exploring, like, if you were actually exploring that capacity further, what else could you do with it without even being any better at it, right? Like,
or just like taking it into other, it could be kinky, but taking it in other realms and just seeing what else, where else you could pull or push or play, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, but maybe like what do you mean by that?
Well, like, for instance, like when you are, the first thing that popped into my head was like gardening. I don't know why, but
okay,
it doesn't really matter.
Okay, hold on. I just want to say, one of the things that you may or may not know is that I've been gardening lately, and I didn't know a gardener. So so there's things where you like, it may be just as easy for you to be aware halfway around the world as it is. I'm going to change over to my computer.
All right. What was I saying? So what I was thinking was like, when, I guess it's the same sort of sense of, I remember my aunt quoting this thing at me because she loves to garden, and basically it was something like, gardening is the slowest of the art forms out there. And I thought, well, and I didn't really, I was like, yeah, whatever. Because wasn't a gardener at the time. I wasn't into it. There's two of you. You've cloned yourself. Anyway. So, there you are. I can see the back and the front. I love it. That's funny. Blah, blah, blah. So there was this sort of sense when I was like moving, like I know gardeners, maybe they do this, but I would do it all the time. I would look at different plants and I'm like, are you happy there? And I would just move things all the time. I mean, not trees, usually, because they're a little heavier. They usually have a denser root system, things like that. But yeah, and so I was constantly reconfiguring my garden. And it's okay, this is where I'm going with it. And it's a similar sense of when I'm doing collage, is there's almost like a click, or a, like, when you finally find the right puzzle piece, or you click something into place, or you unlock a lock or a code or a blah blah. There's kajunk. And that's often when I know a piece is done too. It's that sort of clunk.
You can. Okay, so I
think you might need to switch your sound.
I think you're right.
I think another project I'm going to do is do things not symmetrical. Just deliberately make something that is supposed to be symmetrical not. Sometimes it drives me crazy. The OCD just kicks into overdrive.
Go ahead and do the thing that makes you crazy. Yes. Torture yourself until you give it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
My garden is asymmetrical. My front yard is absolutely asymmetrical. So except for I found out some very interesting things. I went on a walk on Saturday with all the and how long have we been on? Have we done the hour again?
Well, I think we started a quarter or half after. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. I probably need to get back to my normal work in a minute. So what was I? Oh, I found out some interesting things about the way my neighborhood is laid out. And one of the things that I found out is the way that I designed my my garden with the help of a gardener that I picked out by basically asking plants like, hey, who could I use like to create my garden that would be, that basically could create what I want to create that would be really fun. Like, it'd be fun for the house. It'd be fun for the yard. It'd be fun for me. And talk about asking weird questions of weird things. And so all of a sudden I looked across the street one day and there's a van with a big flower on it. And I was like, whoever that is, that person. That's how I became good friends with my friend April, who's a chiropractor. Like, I want to add a chiropractor to my life for no good reason. I didn't hurt. I was just like, oh, a chiropractor in my life would be great. Who am I going to add? That person. And we became great friends. And so this gardener, what we ended up doing is creating this wave that goes through the yard and then goes across the walkway and then down the side of the house. And what it does is then meets up with another path that actually then runs into a trail. So it turns out that where the garden begins, this point that it actually begins at, I was a little bit like, I wonder where this began. Then I went on the trail thing, the trail tour, and I found out that that point actually points to another trailhead. So it actually takes a trailhead that then comes to my garden that then leads back down into another trail. So it actually has this flow that goes around. It actually takes the energy of the trail and runs it around my house instead of into my house.
That's really amazing.
Mm-hmm. I was like, well, that's so interesting. And it was really fun. The person who was leading the tour was like, okay, so do you know where this trail ends up? And I was like, I have no idea. I'm so turned around right now because there are a couple places in Atlanta that I swear you basically like drive there and then the whole place picks itself up and then travels. And then when you drive away, you drive into a part of town that you shouldn't be able to get to. Like that's in my head. This is what happens when you go here. It's sort of like those things where if you like drive into the center circle and the circle turns and then you drive straight again, but you drive off another, right? It feels like that. Well, that's how the trails around here are. There are some trails that you go in one direction. I swear you should be heading in the direction of something, but you're actually heading in the opposite direction.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I know that if I saw a map, it would actually line up. But it's like there were places in Atlanta where you shouldn't be able to get to the new place without traveling over a road, but you could, but it should have been impossible. Like you should have had to cross the road, but you never crossed the road to get there. And you're just like, this actually is not possible. But because nobody's bothered to pay attention, because everybody lives in a world where it has to be possible if you did it, they just haven't noticed that it's actually like this in this reality, it's actually impossible. But they just never noticed where it's like, oh no, don't notice when something's impossible. Just keep doing it.
Yeah. There's a road that I used to take from my old apartment, and it was called Grunsborough Road, and it was sort of snaked through the countryside. And I swear there were sections of the road that would pick up and move, and you could almost like leapfrog onto the next section. And you're like, I don't think I was that checked out that I didn't notice. Like, I'm pretty sure I noticed. But it's really cool, and it has has roots in trees. Like it's like something out of Hobbitville. It's very cool. So it doesn't really surprise me that it does it.
Yeah. Well, especially this place. I'm finding out more of the things about this place, which I'm enjoying very much. I'm like, oh yeah, like, oh.
Yeah.
Some places, one of the first times I came to visit to actually, so there's this thing called ask and receive. Like you may have heard it in the Bible, and or it's ask and you shall receive. And there's some times in my life where it's been instantaneously. There have also been some places where it happens more instantaneously than others. And to me, for me, and I think that it may change from person to person, but for me, this is one of those places. One of the first times I came to visit, once I was like, no, I'm living here. I had thought to myself, like, I was like 4. I was like, no, 8. Like, I thought to myself 8 different things. So like, oh, it'd be really fun to have a really cool way to frame my pieces. And then, oh, it would be really fun if I had this thing. Oh, it'd be really fun if just those kind of thoughts, oh, it'd just be really fun. And on one of those trips, like the first one that I was like, no, I'm going to live there. I came down. And I walked into the store, and then they were like, oh yeah, no, we do these really cool things where we take this metal and we frame artwork, blah, 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 and show. I was like, that's so funny. It's not a store that's it's not a frame store or anything. It's this other, anyway, it's not what I went in there for at all. I went out in there because I was like, this place looks curious. I want to go in there. And, there were all these different examples of that where the stuff that I'd said, oh, that'd be fun, that it was just instantaneous. Oh, that'd be fun, instantaneous. Oh, that'd be fun, instantaneous. Oh, that'd be fun, instantaneous.
Well, I think it's almost like when you're willing to. One of my friends, I love her. You know her too, Ziggy.
Oh yeah.
She's always talking about, I dare. And I thought about her. She's like, she's probably in her late 70s, early 80s. Uh-huh. And that's sort of been coming into my head a lot. Like, I'm going to dare to do this. Like, sort of step out on the edge of everybody's sort of point of view about how it should be or what it should look like, and just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when you dare, you invite the magic in, whereas when you like we were talking about earlier, just following those points of view that you might not even know that you have.
That's the thing. I discovered one of those yesterday that I was like, that I was like, what? I have been living my life from this thing and not knowing it forever. Like, I did not know that this was how I was living my life. And it was not a choice I made this lifetime. Like, it was a choice from forever ago. And I know some of you watching this may not believe in having other lives or whatever. That's okay too. Then just imagine that I chose it at the very beginning of this lifetime. That's fine. But it didn't happen at the very beginning of this lifetime. It's been lifetimes and lifetimes. And lifetime. Maybe I have never existed having a body like this on this planet, or like on a planetoid like this. Never wasn't living life. Like, and the funny thing is if I ask myself the question now, like, is that who I am? I'm like, no. Like, have you ever done that in this lifetime? Mm-mm. Like, would you? No. But I was still living my life. It's like living my life as if I'm a danger to everyone.
Wow. Yeah, I know that one.
And for good reason, right? Like, we were talking about sniper type, sniper of magnitude across multiple, like, I may have never lived a lifetime when I was not an assassin, ever. And so I was looking there was like something that came up, and all of a sudden I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm sort of acting like everybody may or may not be an enemy. But if you ask me, is everyone your enemy? I'd be like, no. So that's where it gets really weird because I go, oh, is everybody your enemy? No. But I kind of had this point of view that was not cognitive, that anyone at any moment could kill me. And that was just fact. Anyone at any moment could kill me. And anyone at any moment may be a target. And I was just sort of like, does that make any sense for this lifetime? No.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's not the same thing. And for the longest time, ever since I was a kid, I was always paranoid about people stealing stuff from me. And I realized at some point that actually somewhere, sometime, I had been an amazing thief. And like living my life today, I would never do that. I mean, the guilt and the angst that I would put myself through would, would not rise, like I couldn't do it.
I have a dare.
Oh no. And yet I can sit somewhere and I can, in my head, go, this is how you would get that. Because that's how good I was at doing that at one point in time in some other lifetime. As I said, this lifetime, rarely, or by accident, I have done that. My mom and I were at a restaurant once and we walked out without paying, and then we were like an hour away and we were like, oops. Didn't pay that.
I ended up with a restaurant napkin a few months ago. I was like, I got home and I was like, wait, what? Oh, I didn't mean to take your napkin.
A friend of mine ended up with a toilet seat under her arm because she'd been at the Home Hardware and she thought, I need that. And then she got out of her car and she's like,
I did that with a purse one time. I did take it back, but I had just tried it on and then it so just felt like it was already mine. I just didn't think about it at all. I walked out and I just was like, do, and a whole bunch of us walked out. And then I reached down to get not my purse. I reached down to get my phone. Only I was very confused by whose bag it was that I was like not finding. I'm like, what is this? Oh my God. I just and the weird part was whenever I took the bag back, all the people in the store were basically like, why'd you bring it back? I was like, because I just stole it and I don't steal things. So one of the things that I realized, this is not the sniper thing, this is a different thing, was that I also was doing instead of always being afraid of people stealing or like being like, don't steal my stuff. I would walk into a store and I would be like, I felt like I had to put my hands in my pocket, like I was going to accidentally steal something, like that. I just like, I wouldn't be able to help it, that like, that somehow I was already guilty. Like I had the weirdest sense. I'd just like put my hands in my pockets because I was like, oh my God, I could I just wouldn't even know, like this whole idea, like I might not even know. And so I'm just going to put my hands in my pocket. Weird points of like weird stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Like I knew I wouldn't do it on purpose, but somehow I always felt like people assumed that I was going to steal things. And but one of the things that I realized is that the trying so hard not to be a person who steals things also put me in this like weird position of not taking things that are even non-tangible unless somebody intentionally gifted them and they knew it.
Yeah.
Which meant that I couldn't take knowledge. I couldn't take awareness. There were all these things that because I wasn't going to take anything, that I couldn't take these things. So I always had to earn everything on my own. So including knowledge, including awareness, including, gifts, talents, abilities. I couldn't just take them. Yeah. You can't take something away from somebody. If you take somebody's gift, they don't lose it. You have it and they have it. You actually add more to the world with it. And so I started asking myself, what can I steal today that will create greater consciousness right away?
Yeah.
And it was so uncomfortable because I'm like, oh no, do I have to steal something? I was like, good and well, Stephanie, that you don't have to steal anything. But what if you stole it would create greater consciousness?
Yeah.
And I was like, so uncomfortable. It doesn't match who I think that I am. And I was like, what if you stole it would create greater consciousness on the planet? So anyway, that's a sort of fun one. And I don't mean go out and like physically steal things. Although I did have something interesting immediately after I started asking that. I did have this thing where I walked into a store and I had somebody else with me. I walked into a store and there was a necklace that started just going, me, take me, take me, take me. And I was like, shut up, I'm not taking you. I was like, oh, but you would be really great as a gift for my mom. So I'm literally in that same sort of like putting my hands in my pocket kind of thing. I literally carry the necklace through the store like a weirdo, like dangling it in front of me. I'm not stealing this, right? But the weird thing is I got into the case, nobody saw me. I pulled the necklace out, nobody saw me. I walked through the store with the necklace dangling in front of my face like a weirdo. Nobody would look at me. Like they wouldn't look at me. Not just they didn't, they wouldn't. Like they literally would sort of like this, like look, everybody looked away like the entire time. And the necklace is going, no, really, take me. And I was like, what? And then I was like, well, who wants me to take you? And I was like, the owner of the business. Yes. And I was like, the artist. Yes. I was like, I was like, this is so weird. I got up to the register and I'm literally standing there and the girl won't pay attention to me. And so I'm like, hello. She still won't look up. I'm like, will you help? Like, can I buy this? And she looks up and she's like, oh, okay. But like that, not, oh, that, how are you doing? Did it like, just like, okay. I hand it to her. It doesn't have a price on it. They literally like, it was actually more trouble for that in her mind, the person it was more trouble for me to buy it than it actually was to sell it. Right. Like it was actually
so weird.
And so I finally make it through the process of like buying it, but it became like harder to buy it than like live the whole time. It was really funny. Again, I would never tell anybody to like walk out of the store with it, but it gave me awareness of those places. So here's what I actually got out of that. Not that I should have stolen it. That's not what the story is about. Again, oh my gosh, this is like, this is another one of those examples of where I'm like, oh wow, people can really take this stuff out of context, right? But, but take it out of context, go for it. But what it gave me when I asked for more consciousness and more, like what I got was more awareness of how many times people actually don't want to be paid, when the whole thing is that their business is around being paid, but people don't actually like money. So the awareness was all these different places where it would have worked out better. It would have fed into what other people believe about their life. It would have fed into what people can have as their life for me to take it rather than to actually value it enough to make sure that I paid for it. That was actually not just paying for it because I had to. It was literally going, no, I am going to value this more than you do. Yeah. Which is that moment was like, wow, how much of my personal life do I actually value things more than other people value them? Value things about other people more than they value them. Value, like, I'm a Being You certified facilitator. So are you, right? Like Simone's also, you're not?
No.
That's weird.
It is really weird because I could easily.
You could.
I'm on the team that supports them. And every time I go, because I mean, I've been to the classes, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. There's so many reasons why it would be a good idea. And every time I ask, okay, well, no.
Your question?
Sure.
A weird one?
Yes.
Who are you asking?
Me.
Is that like? Okay. So anyway, so
she gives me a giant wedgie and then walks away.
So I'm a Being You certified facilitator, and I don't know why I was telling that part of the story. There was something it was relevant to. Oh, and valuing things that other people don't value. So we actually pay to be Being You certified facilitators, in part to pay for the support, like Simone being on a team that supports us and actually helps us create a whole bunch of magical stuff.
So it's basically like, hey, we have an office staff, so we pitch in because we have people doing things that require, they would like to get paid too, and they should get paid. I see that as like, oh my gosh, I get to contribute to people contributing to this magical thing existing in the world. I am happily giving money. So I paid at the beginning of every month. That caused so much confusion for the first 2 months that I did it. It literally led, like, I kept getting these like reminders that were like, Stephanie, we need your money. And I was like, I already paid. And they're like, well, we can't find it. And I was like, look at the beginning of the month. Because most people wait until it's due, and I get to the new month and I'm like, okay, so we're creating this month. I put like, I'm valuing what you're doing. Like, I'm valuing the team. I'm valuing the, I'm valuing being you, changing the world, and like, hey, the adventures. And I'm like, hey, let's create. And so it's really funny just to look at the different places where you valuing something more than someone else, that it doesn't always work out the way you think it will. You think that it's great, you may have to just keep it a secret that you value things more than other people do. And that's just where, me asking, what can I steal today, to create more consciousness right away, and walking through the store with this necklace, all the awareness I got from that, of being like, okay, if I stole this, what would happen? Oh, the store owner would be happier. The artist would be happier. The only reason I'm not stealing this is because at this moment, I'm a person who doesn't steal.
Yeah. Well, and I also wonder, like, if there is another way, like, I'm thinking of that tool of like seeing how many things you can get a no to, and like going to them and saying, hey, can I have this for free? Like, it just sort of like popped into my head, and I was like, that's another way of
can I have this?
Feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they don't value it.
Yeah, but that's the thing is the weird part is you can have awareness of things that other people aren't even willing to have awareness of.
That's
if
true.
I asked the artist, if I stole this, would it be a contribution to you? They would say no. Yeah. Because they're not even willing to be aware of where they're actually functioning from. Having less is a greater contribution to them than having more. Like, most of the time, we're not willing to look at that stuff. It's the stuff that we're so embroiled in that we don't know it's who we are, or it's who we're behaving as. And so we create these entire lives around these things that we won't even tell ourselves the truth about. In that case, it being like, somehow having it stolen would have been a greater contribution.
Right? Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely see where you're going. I was just looking at other ways of, quote unquote, stealing that actually would work.
I feel like that's like such a weasel, instead of just like a weasel. Like trying to make it okay instead of like
what loophole can I use here?
I love it. I'm like, oh, I could probably learn something about that. I'm like, oh, I think there's something for me to learn here. So I made it sort of much more black and white, like, oh, I could steal this right now and I'm not going to. Like, I won't. And you're like, well, but you don't really have to steal it, but you could have it without paying for it. How could you have it without paying for it?
I mean, maybe I've spent too much time around kids, because they're the best weasels ever.
Yeah, that's true.
And I find that when they like weasel, like when they really do a good job, I'm like, okay, you can have that. Or,
like, that was so funny and so impressive that you're like, or you just wear somebody down, but not in the mean way. Like, the mean way to wear somebody down makes people more resistant. Yeah. But there's this other really
playful and like,
yeah. But if I did this, could I have it?
Well, like, I had money.
And then you're like, and they just ask until you're like, why? Until I hit this moment where I go, why am I so insistent that they care?
Yeah, like, does it really matter?
Do I actually care? Like,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I go dance now? No. can I dance now? No. Can I dance now? Wait, why am I saying no, you can't dance? That's stupid.
Yeah. Well, and I really love playing with those different energies of what people value. Like, I used to have students come to me, I worked at a boarding school, and they'd want to do jobs for me and get paid.
Uh-huh.
And they would say, well, I'd say, well, how much would you like for that job? And I would always ask in my head, okay, so what are they willing to actually receive?
Mm-hmm.
And so while we were maybe dickering back and forth,
mm-hmm.
I would get to the point where I'm like, actually, they could receive more than they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of lowballing them, I would actually go, hey, I think I would like to pay you this. And they would be like, but that's more. And it would totally freak them out. But it also, and sometimes it was only like 5 cents more or something.
Mm-hmm. But
sometimes it was $1 or $2 more or much more. And it would give them this sense of like, I have value. And it was so marvelous to see.
I had somebody look at me and ask me how much I wanted for something I had done. And I went to go like, oh, huh. And my first thought, I actually was doing it just as a gift. And I was like, well, I actually just did that as a gift. I'm so grateful for everything you've been and done in my life. Like, I don't actually want money. I was, okay, well, that's funny. Well, if I don't pay you, then you never get to work for me again. And I was like, ugh, that was the first wedgie. And then the second one was, so do you want me to pay you now or do you want to invoice me? Which basically was the question, do you want to tell me to my face what you want to ask me for, or do you want to hide behind an invoice? And I was like, I'll just ask. And he's like, okay, cool, how much? And then as a number flashed in my head, which is what happens when somebody actually gives you the information. So like there was no number in my head. I actually didn't care. And so a number flashed, which was how much. And then he offered, before I got the chance to say anything, he said, I know I can always ask you how much you want to be paid for something because you'll never ask for what you're actually worth.
Ooh. I could feel the burn from here.
I was like, oh, every financial interaction that I've had since then, that has played in my head. You will never, and I'm like, oh, what would I, wow, if that's true, like never. I mean, that's the like, literally like whatever you would ask for would never be what you actually are worth, which has gotten me looking at every time I ask for money. I'm just like, wow, what, like anyway, that is called a wedgie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that giving somebody more when you know they can receive more, same thing. It does that thing where it's like, what is that? Like, what did you just do? What?
Yeah. I'm just looking at the time. I think we've spent.
I know. We need to go.
Usually do.
I know. We're well into our next. I think we've done about an hour and a half.
I think we have. I think we're more restrained this week.
Yeah, because we're like 3 hours in. I just want to spend all Wednesday with Simone.
Yeah, ditto.
Hanging out in my basement. Not even there's actually a finished part of my basement. Surprise, surprise. I'm hanging out in the annals of my basement.
Nice. The bowels.
The bowels of my basement.
So what's our challenge for this week? I mean, we've already challenged our viewers in many ways.
Oh, yes. Yeah, in more ways than they can receive. I sort of wonder what would happen, like what can I steal?
I like that.
That could, you want to do that one?
Ooh, and yours could be what can I weasel?
Oh, I don't wanna. Like, that doesn't even feel fun.
But it could be.
Fine.
I have a friend. Well, you know her.
Is there an easier way than?
Okay. Well, you know,
that's a judgment of weaseling. Fine.
We're both friends with this person that is probably the best weaseler I know.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Clark, love you. I'm happy you probably watch this.
Oh, really? You think she, wait, so tell me.
She can loophole and weasel like I have never seen anyone before.
For some reason, the way she does it feels like fun.
Yeah.
So I just had somebody do weasel with me, but not in the way that you're talking about it, and not in the Ann way, but in this other way that I'm like, oh, I fell for it again. Like, how do you not fall for this thing? Okay, so here's the way it works. Someone makes an offer. Hey, you want to get your bars run? I'm like, yes, I want to get my bars run. Okay, cool. Well, would you be willing to come to my house? I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, so what's the address? Da, 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 da. And then like, so do you mind barking dogs? And I feel like this happens with like dating and stuff. You know, like somebody presents something like, hey, you want to go to dinner? And you're like, oh yeah, that'd be fun. And then they're like, okay, cool. Well, how about you come pick me up? And you're like, wait, how about I come pick you? Okay, well, I don't actually have a big point of view about that. So, okay, well then do you mind also picking up? And you're like, wait, how it's being on the, so I'm trying to protect the people on the other side of the weasel. Because I'm like, I don't like this. Like, okay, so we went from, do you want to get your bars run, to, hey, do you want to drive an hour to get your bars run, to, do you want to drive an hour to get your bars run and be in the middle of barking dogs? Like, it went from like, oh, I'm offering this one thing, but it's actually an altered landscape of this thing.
So I'm wondering, like, if you were willing to be the weasel of consciousness, if those people would actually still show up in your life, and if they did, how could you out weasel them?
Well, I mean, I get that I can yes. Okay, I was about to weasel in a different way. I wonder.
I saw that squirm.
I know. I was about, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. Weaseling it is this week. I think yours is more fun.
I think mine is more fun too, actually, because I'm going to add the weasel to the stealing.
No.
What? I can't add the weaseling? Mm-hmm. That's just cruel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because the weaseling is actually weaseling out of what I'm actually asking you to look at.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it is. I just tried to weasel there.
I know. Yeah, it's going to the place of comfort. Like what okay, so for the public, if you didn't catch what just happened, so the reason I don't like what Simone just suggested is it's something I'm actually not, that I don't actually do, and it's something that I am not comfortable with, and it's not fun for me, which is why I haven't justification.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's what you just saw me do. Justification. That's why I don't do this. No, really, if I was willing to do anything to have what I say I would like to have in the world, if I was willing to be the weasel of consciousness, to create more consciousness or do whatever it takes, right? And instead I'm like, well, isn't there an easier way? Which is actually a judgment of weaseling, that it's not fun, that it's not easy. Those are all judgments. That's the life I've been living, is in the fishbowl of the water called weaseling isn't fun. And I just think that that's reality. So Simone, on the other hand, is like, weaseling is fun. That is the easy way. So I gave her a dare that actually is asking her to look at something different. It's not look at anything specific. It's just changing a point of view. So she wanted to say, oh no, I can do this without changing my point of view. And I'm saying, no, I dare you this week to actually just to change a point of view.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you get to something that's a point of view that you're so favorable of, and somebody dares you, it's like, I don't want to do it. That doesn't sound fun. And really what I'm saying, if I say that, is I don't want to have a greater life because I'm comfortable with the point of view I have. Yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can actually have fun weaseling.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny as you say, like, okay, you can't use the weasel, but the thing that comes up for me is that the part of the unwillingness to receive from people is that I feel like I'm stealing. Thanks, it's going to work already.
And her ears turn red.
I know.
All right, so you have spent another hour and a half with Simone Padura and Stephanie Richardson, drinking coffee, getting dirty, and making stuff on the fly, except for we didn't really make anything.
Well, we started it. I think making stuff on the fly happens before and after.
It has been happening before and after, but you did see that painting in the background is a little different than when we started.
It is, and I have more definition on my birdie painting.
Excellent.
Like one line.
So even if nothing happened during this hour and a half that you can see on canvas, next week you will probably be seeing new pieces from us. And if you actually want to see all the work that has transpired over the week, you may just have to head over to Pinterest, where I will need to start adding things because I've been on Instagram instead of Pinterest.
Alrighty. and it's dirty drinking and making shit up on the fly is the Pinterest to look at.
Okay, dirty drinking and making shit up on the fly?
Yeah.
Or making shit on the fly.
One of those.
All right, well, I'll see if I can find it.
Okay.
See you later.